news.
Okay, we'll start with this. In men's lightweight news, on the heels of Gervonta Davis's win over Ryan Garcia, his trainer Calvin Ford says, "I don't think Haney has got anything that could really stop Tank."
Yeah, they used to say that about Mayweather and Pacquiao. They used to say Floyd's feather fisted. He can't hurt Manny.
But when they fought, who won the fight?
You know the answer.
These fights are going to happen, Ford told BoxingScene.com. They've just got to continue doing what they need to do to get their numbers up to make it make sense. That's what people don't understand. Make the fight, make the fight, make the fight. You've got to deal with the network.
So?
Both of them guys, Haney and Stevenson, are on the other side of the fence. So it'll have to make sense to their team to ask for the event. You know what I'm saying? Tank is proven. He's proven that he can do what he did.
Yeah, with Ryan's help.
Read in between the lines.
Do it.
Why should Gervonta Davis, the quote-unquote face of boxing, have to wait for Devin and Shakur to get their numbers up? You're the money guy. You're the cash cow.
Canelo didn't have to wait for Callum Smith, Billy Joe Saunders, or Caleb Plant to get their numbers up.
Calvin Ford continued, "Again, it has to make sense for everybody. We know that when they sit down at the table, they're going to look at what you did. They're going to look at your actuals. Do it make sense to make that fight? Or if you say you really want that fight, take the offer and beat the man. Tank is the man."
If he's the money man, why is he waiting for guys to get their numbers up in order to do a fight? When you're the money man, the other guys' numbers don't matter.
That's what I'm telling you. It's all smoke and mirrors with these guys.
Canelo didn't have to wait for Billy Joe Saunders, Callum Smith, Caleb Plant, Dimitri Bivol. He didn't have to wait for any of those guys to get their numbers up to get them in the ring. His marquee value alone was enough to bankroll those fights. But Gervonta?
Is he really good for 1 million pay-per-view buys or over 1 million without Ryan to help him? Is he really?
These guys are measuring the risks. That's what they always do. There's always some lofty explanation as to why a formidable fighter can't be Gervonta Davis's next fight. You say that those guys are on the other side of the street, but so was Ryan.
That didn't stop you from fighting him, or is it that the only reason you fought him is because Ryan Garcia represented the most reward for the least risk?
He was the least experienced of all your contemporaries, the least accomplished, but the most popular.
In my book, I don't think Haney has got anything that could really stop Tank, Ford said. You know, he hasn't shown me anything where I go, woo! You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, so if you think he's that easy to beat, make the fight.
I understand what you're saying. I understand just fine. You don't think that Devin can keep Gervonta off of him. Good.
Get him in the ring then.
I'm hoping that he beats Vasyl Lomachenko, said Ford, who trains Davis alongside with Kenny Ellis. I would love for him to beat Lomachenko, but I know if Lomachenko has the belts, it's bigger. He's bringing a country, Ukraine, with him. The reality is that Davis versus Lomachenko fight was supposed to be, in my book, a Godzilla fight, because he's got good numbers here and he's got great numbers abroad. We just have to wait and see how it unfolds with them guys, Haney versus Lomachenko. Wait till we get that guy that's touted as that guy, where the fans say, we want to see that fight.
You know what's not being said? That Gervonta Davis is in possession of a WBA secondary title at lightweight that can be used as a segue to get the winner of that fight in the ring as their mandatory challenger.
Ahead of this past weekend's fight, WBA President Gilberto Mendoza said, after the match on April 22nd, a decision will be made in line with the policy of a single champion per category of the WBA.
In case you guys forgot, a little over a year ago, under pressure and scrutiny from the ABC Commission, the WBA was ordered to phase out all these secondary titles they've got floating around at all of these weights. And they've already phased out most of them, save Gervonta Davis's belt and David Morrell's.
It's not a coincidence that the two remaining WBA regular title holders are both PBC fighters. The PBC that the WBA has long been suspected of having an unethical relationship with.
They give those PBC guys special consideration. Look at how long it took them to make a decision when it came to Lee Wood and Leo Santa Cruz.
Look at how long it's taking them to make a decision when it comes to Gervonta Davis. That fight between him and Ryan was Saturday. It's Friday now.
Still no word, still no order.
They're taking their time. They always do when it involves PBC fighters.
They don't want to have to put Gervonta Davis on the spot, order him to fight the winner of that fight, because if he doesn't comply, then his belt gets phased out.
And he's left with nothing. He won't be a champion of any kind, anywhere. Thus, they're taking their time because they don't want to put him on the spot.
The winner of Haney versus Lomachenko is supposed to be in a conversation for Gervonta Davis, as is Shakur Stevenson, who has drawn crowds of over 10,000 for each of his last two fights at the Prudential Center, but he hasn't headlined a pay-per-view show.
Shakur does have value, Ford said. Shakur don't have no belts, but Haney didn't really do anything different from Shakur. When you look at Shakur, Shakur is more that guy than Haney. Haney just has the belts. That's all. He had a better opportunity, you know? That's all.
This guy's working really hard to downplay Devin Haney. Hopefully, if Devin wins, he'll put his money where his mouth is.
You were just in one of the most successful pay-per-views of the last, 5 years? One of the more successful ones. So what's stopping you from getting Devin in the ring if he beats Vasyl Lomachenko?
Aren't you the money man? Aren't you the cash cow? Aren't you the new face of boxing?
And if nothing else, aren't you here and now in possession of a WBA secondary title that you can use to force a fight with Devin Haney? Not just Devin, whoever wins that fight between Devin and Loma.
There's nothing stopping you from pursuing the winner of that fight.
Least of all if you really are the new face of boxing. It can be a co-promotion, the same as Wilder and Fury.
You remember that fight?
That's if Vasyl Lomachenko wins. If Devin Haney wins, it's my understanding that this is his final fight under his existing deal with Top Rank.
Spare me your fight predictions. Spare me whoever you think wins, because I want to see the fight, irrespective of how you think it goes.
Devin Haney of Henderson, Nevada, soundly defeated George Kambosos Jr. on points in back-to-back bouts before he agreed to fight Lomachenko. If Lomachenko beats Haney, the Ukrainian southpaw could face Stevenson later on this year because both boxers are promoted by Bob Arum's Top Rank Inc. Stevenson is one of them guys, and he's making moves towards that fight with Davis, Ford said. He came up from 130 to 135. Had his first fight at 135. We have to see what's next for him, what they're going to do to make him more marketable.
What difference does it make how marketable the guy is or isn't when you're supposed to be the new face of boxing, aren't you?
How marketable was Mario Barrios or Rolly Romero? How marketable was Isaac Cruz or Hector Luis Garcia? That didn't stop you from fighting those guys.
You're going to start talking about how marketable the fighters are when it comes to Devin, when it comes to Shakur.
Batten down the hatches and get ready for an avalanche of bullshit.
Get the shovel.
Earlier this week, the good people at the Boxing Voice discussed Calvin Ford's expressed desire for Gervonta to run it back with Isaac Pitbull Cruz.
What?
Isaac, who since having fought Gervonta and lost to him, he hasn't started headlining his own shows. He's not...
Devin Haney headlines his own shows. He's been doing that for a while. Isaac Cruz hasn't.
Everybody talks about this major profile boost that Isaac Cruz got after having fought Gervonta Davis, but it's not a big enough boost that he's headlining his own shows. He isn't. He's still an undercard fighter. And who's Calvin Ford talking about Gervonta fighting? He's talking about him fighting Pitbull Cruz. But when it's Devin Haney, he's got to get his numbers up.
Make it make sense.
I will. Gervonta Davis isn't the face of boxing. He's not as big a cash cow as everybody lets on. And the reason that Calvin is more receptive here and now to a Pitbull rematch as opposed to a Haney fight is because Isaac Pitbull Cruz is cheaper than Devin Haney.
You can't pay an undisputed champion the same way you'd pay a Rolly Romero or an Isaac Cruz.
Now, in theory, at least in theory, for the cash cow, for the face of boxing, what you have to pay a guy shouldn't be a problem, but it's a problem for Gervonta because he's not really the face of boxing.
Nope.
If he were,
You wouldn't have to clip coupons.
that's what you're doing. You're clipping coupons to save money. You know Isaac Cruz. You can get that guy in the ring with a few $100,000, but Devin Haney, he's already a seven-figure fighter. He already makes over $1 million, over two, fight by fight.
And never mind that you already beat Isaac Cruz. You wouldn't be in unfamiliar territory with him, but you would be in unfamiliar territory with Devin Haney.
The smoke and mirrors. The illusion of Gervonta Davis's drawing power is going to be around for a while, for some months, until his next fight, when you see that there's a dramatic drop in sales. Because if he don't fight Devin and he don't fight Shakur, not that many people are going to be interested.
And it doesn't sound like he's about to fight Devin or Shakur.
Him and his fans are going to ride this wave, the wave that the Ryan Garcia fight has created. I don't think Canelo Alvarez's upcoming fight, the fight with John Ryder, I don't think that's going to do 1 million buys or over 1 million buys. I think it'll top out at around 500,000.
600,000 the max.
What Gervonta Davis's fans are going to resort to doing is claiming that he has usurped Canelo as the face of boxing based on the Ryan Garcia numbers, not tacking on that you had a high-profile dance partner to help you sell it. he doesn't.
Whatever he does with John Ryder, he does off his name alone. He's carrying the pay-per-view. You weren't.
Nope.
You had Ryan Garcia to help you bear that burden. You yourself.
You couldn't crack 300,000 buys until he came into it. And you were on pay-per-view 5 times. That's what you're good for.
That's what you draw off your name alone. Off Canelo's name alone, he can draw 500,000, but can you? Can you do that fighting Isaac Cruz again?
This willful ignorance and these obtuse arguments, they're going to be around for a while. Couple of weeks, couple of months.
They are.
Up until Gervonta Davis's next fight. And if his next fight is with either Rolly Romero or Isaac Cruz, watch how fast those numbers nosedive.
Watch.
Because what Gervonta Davis and his team are hoping for is that on the heels of this box office success, this big pay-per-view, there will be a bit of spillover. That the next Isaac Cruz fight, if he does fight Isaac next, it will be bigger than the first one. And it might be.
Might be a little bigger.
Might be bigger than the first one because the first one, in the first fight, Isaac was a late replacement.
But don't get it in your head that you're going to sell 500,000 pay-per-view buys with that thing. I don't think so.
Calvin Ford seems to want Gervonta Davis to run it back with Isaac, and so does Sean Gibbons, Isaac Cruz's promoter, Manny Pacquiao Promotions.
But how much sense does that make? You're saying that Devin Haney, who headlines his own shows and has been headlining his own shows for a while, Devin Haney, who's about to be in a pay-per-view.
He needs to work on marketing. He needs to get his numbers up. But Isaac doesn't. Isaac, who still is an undercard fighter.
Make it make sense.
I did. I told you. The reason Calvin Ford is so receptive to running it back with Isaac is because Isaac is cheaper than Devin, cheaper than Shakur, and you beat him already.
So you're not in unfamiliar territory.
It's all smoke and mirrors, man. That's all it is. I'm not even telling you that Gervonta Davis can't do robust numbers with the right dance partner. Of course he can. He just did.
But if what you're thinking is you're going to do robust numbers staying on Easy Street like you've been staying on Easy Street.
What do you think? 500,000 people are going to pay to see that rerun?
In this economy.
500,000 are going to pay to see that rematch that they're not asking for.
We'll see what happens.
I want to say that a fight with Devin for Gervonta is slightly more winnable than a fight with Shakur. For Gervonta Davis, a fight with Shakur is a fight where he has absolutely no advantages. None. Whereas with Devin, the situation is a little bit more workable, at least a little bit more winnable. Devin is an orthodox fighter, whereas Gervonta Davis is a southpaw. I would give Gervonta Davis the edge in power.
Devin's a skilled boxer. Crafty, but he's got no power.
And Gervonta being a southpaw to Devin, who's an orthodox fighter, that could make things a little bit more tricky for Devin than they would for Shakur, because Shakur's a southpaw, just like Gervonta.
So yeah.
Though Devin and Shakur, they have some commonalities as well. They're both pure boxers. Stylistic nightmare for a counterpuncher. A counterpuncher like Gervonta, because at his best, that's what he is. He's a counterpuncher. He waits for the other guy to make a mistake, then capitalizes.
And neither one of these two are going to make the same mistake that Ryan made, that Rolly made. They're not going to sacrifice defense for offense. These are completely defensively minded fighters
who don't open up as much as a Ryan Garcia, a Rolly Romero, a Mario Barrios, a Leo Santa Cruz, or an Isaac Cruz.
Completely defensively minded. You're looking for a window of opportunity to get off a counter shot that may not open. Not with a pure boxer.
To get to a pure boxer, you need volume, you need activity, and Gervonta Davis ain't a prolific puncher. He's a counter puncher.
It's really only 1 or 2 shots at a time with him.
Many may point to the Jojo Diaz fight. Jojo Diaz got off a lot of shots on Devin Haney, mid-range to inside, but need I remind you that Jojo is a volume puncher. Gervonta is not.
They may both be southpaws, but they don't throw punches at the same rate.
Jojo and Gervonta, when you want to make the pure boxer uncomfortable, you've got to throw punches in bunches. You've got to take the initiative and take the fight to that guy, and that's not what Gervonta Davis does. These highlight reel knockouts that he racks up are when the man opposite the ring is opening up on him.
Not when he's opening up on them. He waits for the right time to get off a shot, hurt the guy, because he's looking for a single shot to do him.
And I think over time he's become a little bit too reliant on that single shot. He's fallen in love with his power, so much so that he sacrifices activity and sacrifices rounds, looking to time a guy.
He's relying on his power. And I'm not completely sold on Gervonta Davis's power. I mean, I do think he's a bigger puncher than Devin. Bigger than Devin, at least. But I didn't forget that he needed 12 rounds to dispatch a one-legged Gamboa, and he couldn't dispatch Isaac Cruz at all. Isaac, who was standing right in front of him
Yeah.
for most of that fight.
You couldn't put away a guy who was coming right at you in a straight line, but you're gonna put away a guy who's moving away from you.
No.
A guy who's gonna slip, roll, and ride punches. A guy who's gonna be economic and stay behind his jab.
Pecking away at you from the outside because they're taller than you are, longer than you are.
As stated, I think the Devin Haney fight is a bit more workable and a bit more winnable than the Stevenson fight.
But that's all relative.
That's compared to the Stevenson fight. Devin Haney by himself can present some serious challenges.
It's a stylistic nightmare for a counterpuncher.
And don't forget that Devin Haney isn't afraid to spoil. Don't forget that Devin Haney is not above hitting and holding to smother the man opposite the ring.
That if Gervonta Davis by some chance should slip past Devin Haney's laser jab, Devin Haney can always tie him up.
Spoil him, smother him, have the ref break it up, and force Gervonta to reset, try to get back in. Devin Haney is not above hitting and holding, which can be very frustrating, albeit very effective.
So as stated, even if the Devin Haney fight is a bit more winnable for Gervonta than the Shakur Stevenson fight, both fights would present serious challenges to him that he has not yet encountered.
That's why Floyd Mayweather has always been averse to Gervonta Davis fighting one of these two guys. That's why he's the one that suggested that they take each other on and leave his guy alone.
That's why Calvin's talking all this marketing stuff, saying that Devin Haney needs to get his numbers up when his numbers are better than Isaac Cruz's, and you're okay with Gervonta fighting Isaac Cruz again.
But you're not okay with him fighting Devin Haney. I suppose one of the caveats for Devin is that while he has the right base style for the job, you have to question how long he can keep making this weight match fit.
Which isn't a problem for Shakur because he just got there. He just moved up to 135 pounds.
Devin's a young guy whose body is still growing. It's not going to get easier over time to make lightweight.
So that's the trade-off. That's the caveat. That Devin's got the right base style for the job, but his punch resistance may be waning over time as a result of continually making 135.
So either Devin or Shakur, both pure boxers, either guy can give Gervonta a lot of problems.
Not that I'm expecting Gervonta to fight either guy this year. I'm not.
But that's how I think it all breaks down.
Their style don't do Gervonta no favors.